Water is life. And because it's so essential to life, we have to have infrastructure to make sure that it gets to certain places.
I think generally people really aren't very aware of the water infrastructure that gets them clean drinking water and takes wastewater away from their home. I think to a lot of people, it's just magic. Water comes in, you turn on the tap, clean water comes out, you flush the toilet, dirty water goes away.
One of the things that we have to do in this country is remove the shame from talking about waste, because we can't talk about water without talking about wastewater as well.
We're down here, this is a urban creek in Mobile. This is 1 Mile Creek just in the distance, and just kind of looking at some of the sewage infrastructure that lies next to all these creeks and thinking conceptually about the problems that we face when we have these large storms, and even when they're not named storms or not tropical storms, the kind of rain we get in the rainiest major city in the United States, the kind of challenges that sewage infrastructure and stormwater face. My name is Cade Kistler. I am the Mobile Bay Keeper, and I work to protect clean water throughout Mobile and Baldwin counties and work on good policy to protect the bay. As our climate continues to change, we see sea level rise, we see year after year, it seems like tropical storms become more frequent and stronger. We're seeing some major stress on our water infrastructure, especially on our sewage lines that are laying down in these low areas and are being inundated by water and by these super high water events. We're early in the hurricane season this year, and we already have a storm in the Gulf that's literally closing down on us right now. The sewage spill is when you have too much flow essentially in your sewage line and you end up with raw sewage overflowing. There's a couple reasons they happen. The most common reason in coastal Alabama and probably throughout the nation is that you have old sewer lines. They break down. And when those pipes break down, rainwater, stormwater, and groundwater can get into your sewer pipe, right? It's not designed to handle that kind of flow. So now all of a sudden you've got this stormwater mixed with sewage and there's nowhere for it to go. So the lowest manhole, the lowest lift station, you start to have overflows. We're in Pritchard, just north of Mobile. They've spilled several million gallons already year to date, and this site right here, every time there's a heavy rainstorm, it's spilling out and flowing into the local creek and then downstream into Mobile Bay, of course. So this has been a really problematic site over and over. We know what's going to happen here in a few hours' time.
In different parts of the world, there's different type of infrastructure depending on the environment. And in our environment here in Alabama, we have lots of water. And what we don't have is the right type of infrastructure that's resilient or helps us to make sure that our water is always clean. And that's where, I come in talking about wastewater infrastructure. My name is Catherine Coleman Flowers. I'm an environmental activist. I work around wastewater, and I am fighting for everyone to have sanitation equity.
In Mobile, Alabama, there's always a storm, there's always a hurricane. It rains in Mobile more than it rains in Seattle. There's always a flood, and I always see that when I'm coming out of my neighborhood. And you have to be mindful of those things because in the summertime, kids are playing, right? They might think, oh, I'm just gonna splat in this water, and just not knowing that it's harmful.
Anything that comes out of somebody's system, right? So whether that's the stomach bug, whether that's COVID, whether that's some other type of illness, all those things are in wastewater. So when you have raw sewage overflow and spill through streets and yards, homes, it can make you really, really sick if you end up coming into contact with it, if you end up swimming downstream of it, not knowing that that's happening. We've got, massive sewage overflow going on here, right in the middle of the street. If you see the sign, caution, this area may be contaminated with a temporary overflow, which is a bit light for my taste. It's raw sewage coming out of the pipe. There's definitely stormwater included, but you can smell it. We'll see how much fecal bacteria, specifically E. coli, is in there, and I'm guessing that it's going to be really high. We put this guy in the cooler, keep him on ice until we get back to the Baykeeper lab, and then we'll test and see how much E. coli is actually in that sewage overflow.
And then we have to take into account climate change. When the water tables are rising, the sea levels are raising, all that's a part of climate change. The infrastructure is not prepared for that. We are seeing examples of impacts. All 67 counties in the state of Alabama. And then you leave this state and go across the country, we're seeing the same thing. We're seeing them in places like in North Carolina where the septic systems are contaminating the drinking water. In Alaska, the melting permafrost is actually exposing the infrastructure, whether it's in Texas, Louisiana. In Florida, they're having fish kills and algae blooms more often now. So that's going to become more common throughout if we don't build more resilient infrastructure. But a lot of these EJ communities, a lot of these communities that we've been talking about have never gotten the infrastructure in the first place.
So this one's near the wastewater treatment plant in Pritchard, which they've had some major issues with their treatment plant as well.
It's like, where do you live? Oh, I live by the treatment plant. Just drive down that street, you'll see it. It's a cliche to say it stinks to live by a treatment plant. It stinks to live by a trucking company. It stinks to live by chemical plants. And I've lived through this all of my life. I just thought that all neighborhoods had these type of things in their neighborhood, but that's not true. I live in Pritchard. I've been living in Africatown all my life, and we have been struggling with environmental issues. Africatown is the home of the last documented slave ship, the Clotilda. I am a direct descendant of 2 of the survivors of the Clotilda. And what those brave enslaved Africans did, they formed their own community, which still stands today.
You talk about how much some of this stuff costs in these communities, where are they going to get the resources and the funds to be able to pay for a massive overhaul of the treatment plant, and it's just it's just not there. So we got to think about how we make sure that communities that don't have the same amount of resources are equitably brought in to be able to have a chance at achieving those funding sources.
A lot of these environmental issues, especially if we see areas closest to municipalities or within municipalities, comes out of racial covenants, where those were the only places where black people could live or where they could buy property. And they oftentimes were not able to get access to first-class infrastructure.
We are in a 100-year floodplain. It's a low-lying area. When it rains a lot, that groundwater is going to back up into that septic tank and fill that septic tank up. And that groundwater continually flows backwards. So when the septic tank is filled, it's going to push all that sewage and everything else back up into your house.
It's going to overflow.
And it's going to overflow. You can't flush. So the only recourse you have is to pray that the rain stops and that the ground dries out and your water table can go down. That's the only recourse you got.
Montgomery is located in central Alabama, the capital city, and a lot of history is here as it relates to both the Confederacy and the Civil Rights struggle.
Montgomery at one point was one of the top slave trading posts in the United States. So Montgomery has a very dubious history. And if you look at Montgomery now, one would see that a lot of the communities, especially one of the oldest black communities in Montgomery, still own septic tanks. And the irony of it is that there is a sewer system here in this town, but these older black communities don't have access to it.
I can knock on any of these doors down here and have somebody talk to you about it. People that I've met and they know me because I'm the representative that would just say it's horrible. They would just give you a whole story, and I don't know if you got enough film for it, on how horrible it is.
It came up through each bathroom shower and just flooded each bathroom with sewage.
You can smell the smell coming out.
Yeah, you can tell they're about to overflow because they're going to be smelling. The water wouldn't flow through like they're supposed to. So we had to move those field lines and hire somebody to come out.
The more we used to commode, the more it came up. I didn't know what was going on. I thought I had a leak.
So we really need sewage out in this area.
I think it's a bit of injustice when you have businesses, fast food restaurants who just come along 231 North. They are hooked up to the city sewer system, and they've only been there 2 or 3 years. These people have lived there 60 years or longer, and they're still begging to be hooked up to the sewer system. And even the middle class communities, now those communities are suffering some disparities and so forth because of neglect of the infrastructure.
So they have city sewer, they don't. Just like one house behind, like right here starts septic tanks. Of course, the city park does. That's a park right there. They have sewer. But all of these houses don't.
I have a neighbor that just paid $20,000 for his system to be upgraded. I came to him and I said, hey, if I was able to get sewage today and you just paid $20,000, would you want to hook up? He said, I'll hook up tomorrow if you can get it out here today. That's how important the city sewage is to somebody else that's on a septic tank.
It would mean a great deal. I wouldn't have to worry about no more overflow. So that would be a great blessing for all of us.
From my experience, we pay taxes and we invest in government. But when it comes time for the communities of color, the low-income communities to have something, it's not automatic that these dollars flow back, and so that is the problem I have. It's always, if you're going to do a major project, you're looking for a federal grant. Well, what happened to the dollars that these folks spent?
We pay the taxes that they require of us to pay. So we want the same services as everybody else. And when they annexed into the city, we expected to have those. And we've been annexed in the city for a long time.
Before now, we were putting money before people. And I think that's the only reason that the city of Montgomery do not have city sewage everywhere.
We're asking for those funds. We're asking for those resources. We're asking people to donate and contribute.
Waterworks is a business. So that means if I can recoup my money from putting city sewage in your neighborhood, guess what? I'm not going to put it in there because how would I recoup my money from all the piping, all the workers that I put out there? So that's what that federal money would do.
We use that as an excuse to do so many things, the lack of money, but the money is here. And so that's why I'm so excited. And I want the initial priority to be getting the necessary funds from the American Rescue Plan Act to communities that are currently on septic tanks, put them on city sewer to help mitigate health disparities.
We meet all the eligibility requirements. We meet it on the public health hazard standpoint. We meet it on the infrastructure standpoint. We meet it on the sewer and water standpoint.
Good evening. We're here again to talk to you about the septic tank problem that we have in Madison Park area. Now we know that you all have to submit a utilization plan to the Department of Treasury. What we want to know from the council here, are we going to be added to that plan, and if not, why? And if so, when will work begin?
You have a commitment from this council that is on the top of our priority list. That is the commitment from this council, because it's not just in your area, which I know you know that, my area as well. So infrastructure like sewage is on top of our list.
Okay, well, Councilor Graham and the rest of you all, just know that I will be here twice a month.
I look forward to seeing you.
Ms. Wright, have you gotten a commitment from the Montgomery County Commission also? We're trying to partner with all the funds that we're getting to make an impact on Montgomery. So
Commissioner Franke says he supports us, and so does
This property out here, like I said, most of it is family owned.
This house here was my father's childhood Jim Walter home.
This is my mother and dad home. This is where we lived at.
My great-granddaddy bought the land that we're on, and it's been family owned since the 1980s. And it's only 3 acres, but it's ours.
And you want to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
They're kin to them. It's just all like a lot of family down here, but they all have taken very good care of their land and their homes, and they just have been battling for years to just change and come on to the city services.
The citizens of Montgomery deserve to have a good life. And I just don't think being on septic gives you that quality of life that you deserve staying in the city of Montgomery in 2021.
So here we go, let's get it done.
Poking around through Mobile today, we're really not seeing many sewage spills, which is a great thing. Moz has spent a lot of money over the last several years to try to tamp these sewage spills down and eliminate them.
Moz is the Mobile Area Water and Sewer System. We provide both drinking water and wastewater services.
We actually, Mobile Baykeepers sued Moz way back in 1998 under the Clean Water Act due to the sewage spills that were ongoing in Mobile. And it has been a long journey from there to where we are now, but we built a really great relationship with Moz.
We all have a part to play in the community in regard to how we fit into the overall puzzle of water service, the environment, public health, and so forth. And Baykeeper works in a capacity where if they see something that needs to be addressed, they'll bring it to our attention and we'll do our level best to address it.
They've gone from almost 20 million gallons of sewage spills several years back. They're getting to a point where those sewage spills have decreased to single-digit millions of gallons, which is still, by any reckoning, way too many, right? But the work continues. Seeing that pay off is really exciting, and then just paints a starker contrast to some of these other communities where the investment hasn't been made yet, where they just don't have a clear plan for how they're going to stop these issues. And on a day like today, after a relatively small amount of rain, at least for Mobile, they're having sewage spills. We've actually been through a Clean Water Act lawsuit with Pritchard as well. Unfortunately, that progress there is not apparent the same way it is in Mobile, and it's got to be recognized at the front of any kind of contrast or comparison between the two that there's a huge resource disparity between those two utilities. And we saw, we went out after Tropical Storm Claudette and saw the sewage spills ongoing in Pritchard. Sample here that we got out of one of the sewage spills that we saw in Pritchard. And what we'll do is we'll test it for E. coli, which just indicates, all the different pathogens that'll be present in that raw sewage.
I would say that Mobile is probably one of the most challenging environments in which to operate a wastewater collection system or a sewer system for a number of reasons. Number one is we are one of the rainiest cities in the United States. Now, when you add that to the age of the infrastructure and the fact that we've got thousands of miles of pipe, much of the pipe is old, needs to be replaced or rehabilitated, and it's very costly to do that. Decades ago, there was the funding to build this infrastructure, but there's not the funding to rebuild it. Moz does not receive tax dollars, and unfortunately, Moz receives very little money in regard to grants. So our only source is the customer and the bill that the customer pays.
This is not a zero-sum game, and I don't think it's okay to most Alabamians and Americans that, hey, I have clean water at my house, but you don't at your house. As long as I've got mine, then I'm okay. That's not the way that I was raised, and I think there's a lot of folks that feel the same way, that all of our neighbors, regardless of income, race, gender, should have clean water. So for each one of these little cells that fluoresce, that indicates a positive cell for E. coli. The more of them that we see fluorescing, the more E. coli was in that sample.
People sometimes forget how important water is to public health. Many people don't realize that water is the only utility you pay for that you actually put in your mouth. And if we do our job right, you shouldn't have to think about it. You turn that faucet on, you have water, you flush the toilet, that goes, and then we've done our part, as long as we keep it properly treated, conveyed, and put back into the public waters.
Down here in coastal Alabama, Mobile Bay, we've got one of the most biodiverse areas in the world. North America's Amazon, all these kind of names. And these kind of issues, right, whether it's sewage spills or stormwater pollution, can have devastating impacts on our environment. Nobody can tell the fish, hey, y'all might want to take a day out of the bay, there's going to be some sewage spills today. The oysters, the dolphins, the manatees, they don't get a break, right? They're subject to all that pollution. So that's really saddening, but also motivating for the work that we do and I do, at Mobile Baykeepers, that we've got a lot of work to do. It doesn't ever stop. It's also critical to our economy, right?
When we develop the infrastructure, it's going to be good for the real estate industry. It's going to be good for businesses who want to come in. I mean, there's millions of dollars to be made that's going to help the economy. And why not help the economy and satisfy some of those who've been left out of the equation for so long? I mean, it's a no-brainer, as they say.
So it's critical that folks let their elected officials know, both now and in the future, that while, yes, we've got to have power, absolutely we need roads that work to drive on, but that clean water is, at the end of the day, the most important piece of infrastructure that we can talk about. It's the most important piece of infrastructure to fund.
The seventh generation principle is to do things in such a way that it will positively impact 7 generations to come. And if we look at the world that way, then we can't destroy the environment. We can't contaminate the water thinking that it's far off into the future and we don't have to be concerned about that. But we do need to be concerned about it now for the generations to come.
These are exciting times. Somebody said they was the best of time and the worst of time.
Yes, sir.
So
yes, sir.
I'm excited.